Hello, you're listening to On Israel in Al Monitor. I'm Ben Caspit from Tel Aviv. We are recording this podcast on Monday. This is a historic day in Israel. 30 minutes ago, Naftali Bennett was sworn in as Israel's 13th Prime Minister. After 12 consecutive years of Benjamin Netanyahu rule, it is over. Bennett is only 49 years old, 2 years older than Netanyahu, and he came first to the Prime Minister's office back in 1996. Bennett is a son of two American-born parents that made an aliyah to Israel from San Francisco in 1967. He was an elite fighter soldier in the unit that produced already two prime ministers in Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu and Ehud Barak. He is a high-tech millionaire after two exits in the high-tech industry. This is his third exit and the most impressive one because he came into the Knesset with only 6 mandates and he became the Prime Minister. After the short break we will take now, we'll have a very interesting talk with the previous Prime Minister, the guy that left office on March 31st, 2009, and gave the wheel to Benjamin Netanyahu. Prime Minister Ehud Olmert will be here with us talking about the transition period in Israel, the future of the Bennett-Lapid government, as I said, right after this short break.
If you're listening to this podcast, you obviously care about the Middle East, and if you do, you should probably be reading Al Monitor. Al Monitor is a global newsroom headquartered in Washington, D.C., with a network of over 160 contributors around the world. Al Monitor offers first-class reporting and analysis from a range of perspectives and an approach that represents the highest journalistic standards, as well as an award-winning commitment to press freedom and independence. If you haven't done so already, visit us at almonitor.com, check out our articles, and sign up for our free newsletters. There's a lot to choose from, including the Week in Review, an essay that offers unusual insights and forecasts into the region based upon Al Monitor's outstanding reporting. And if you haven't done so, please subscribe to our Al Monitor podcast on your favorite podcast platform, on Israel with Ben Caspit, and on the Middle East with me, Andrew Parasolidi.
Prime Minister Ehud Olmert, thank you for joining us here on Israel. Shalom, Ehud Olmert.
Good evening.
We've just seen, and we are recording this conversation minutes after a historic moment when Naftali Bennett was sworn in as Israel's 13th Prime Minister. And I want to ask you to begin with, you left this post on March 31st, 2009. And if I would have told you that day that it will take 12 years to replace Netanyahu, what would you tell me then?
I guess that it would have looked to me rather exaggerated. You know, I didn't expect him to serve 12 years, and I also didn't expect him to cause so much damage to the state of Israel for such a long time. But it did happen.
Yes, it did. And we will talk about his achievements or damage in a very detailed way. But first, you know, many analysts feared the capital scenario that Netanyahu will try to do what Donald Trump did a few months ago on January in Washington, and it did not happen. But what happened in the same vote or session of the Knesset was maybe a mini capital scenario by the Likud and the Haredi Knesset members, with a lot of shouting and yelling, and they did not let Naftali Bennett to complete a single sentence of his speech. How did you feel in this occasion?
Well, to be honest with you, I anticipated it in advance because I knew that Netanyahu doesn't have the power anymore to pull into the Knesset compound thousands of people. So what he did, he took his thugs that are sitting inside the chamber as members of parliament, as former ministers, as ministers, and they did precisely what you described. They were yelling and shouting and disturbing and really behaving in such a shameful manner. I don't remember. I was 9 terms a member of parliament, perhaps more than anyone serving now in the Knesset. And amongst the longest serving members in the history of the Knesset, I don't remember such a behavior, and particularly at such a momentous event. You may disagree with this government, it's legitimate, you can criticize the government, it's legitimate, but to organize the members of parliament not to allow the designated prime minister from making a statement in an honorable and dignified manner is really shameful. There's no other word. But it's typical of the way in which Netanyahu and his friends conducted themselves throughout the last few years. It's not surprising.
Yeah. As a veteran or maybe a mega politician in Israel, what do you think are the survival chances of this government, the coalition that Yair Lapid formed for Naftali Bennett is going from the far left to the extreme right? And this government, if I look at it from my side, they cannot go to war, they cannot make peace, they cannot touch the status quo in religion, in many delicate issues. Do you think this government will survive?
That's a very legitimate and a very timely question, because on the day that they are sworn in and they are inaugurated, obviously the differences amongst the different factions are obvious and incredible. There are two options. One, to do what a true historic leadership would have done, which is to adjust themselves not to what they have been saying for a long time, but to what they think is at this particular time the right thing to do for the state of Israel and for the future of the state of Israel. And that may mean to change to change their commitments and their attitudes and move forward into the future. And I'll give you, there are many examples in Israel's history. Menachem Begin, the role model, if you want, for many of them, he did precisely this. I remember I was a member of parliament. I was a member of parliament with Menachem Begin for 2 terms in which he said, on the day, or many years before, on the day that I will become prime minister, Judea and Samaria, he called the West Bank, yes, will be annexed and be part of the state of Israel. And he said that all of Sinai will be part of the state of Israel. Needless to say, he pulled out from the entire Sinai, and he didn't annex the West Bank. On the contrary, he kept it open for further negotiations. So this was not weakness. This was a show of strengths and leadership of the highest level, and that's why Menachem Begin won his place in history, which is cherished by every Israeli today, those who supported him originally and those who opposed him. Now, therefore, this is one option for Naftali Bennett, for Yair Lapid, for others, for Gideon Sa'ar, to say, let's make peace with the Palestinians, let's pull out from the territories, whatever. They will never do it. So the other option is to go forward on the agenda which is entirely acceptable to all of the different factions of the new cabinet. That is to focus on education, to focus on health, to focus on welfare, to focus on building infrastructure, which is in a deep, serious status today in Israel. And there is a very, very wide basis for effective and determined action by the government, and to leave aside all the other issues that they disagree with. Will they be mature enough and smart enough and courageous enough to accomplish this? Time will tell. I don't know. There are many obstacles facing this government, but there is one thing which gives me at least a hint that maybe this government will prevail for a longer time than expected. And the fact is that presently their chances in coming elections, if there would be a fifth round, will be very small. So the fear of political liquidation would force them to show the highest degree of flexibility in running the affairs of the government. And I think that there is a chance for it, first, because I think that Lapid, primarily Lapid, you have to say, showed maturity and leadership in the manner in which he has addressed himself to the issues, and that he gave up his natural desire and also his privilege to be the first prime minister in this coalition, considering the difference in terms of numbers that he has in comparison to Bennett. But he knew that Bennett will never have his party coming with him unless he can tell them, listen, with 6 members, we have the prime minister's position. Yes. We have important other position in the cabinet, so it's worthwhile to do it. And it required a lot of courage and
leadership,
honesty and leadership, and also honesty from Lapid to acquiesce with it and to give up. So I think that this will guide them. There is now a trust between the two of them. Must be a trust.
How can you explain me, Ehud Olmert, that Tel Aviv right now is celebrating, Tel Aviv, the secular, international, lefty Tel Aviv is celebrating, thousands are dancing in Rabin Square, the crowning of Naftali Bennett, that used to be the CEO of the settlers movement with the yarmulke on his head, and Jerusalem is mourning. It's something that there is an Israeli unprecedented paradox in this story.
Yes and no. When you look at it, really, I mean, the celebration is not so much for Bennett as prime minister as it is for the departure of Netanyahu. The Netanyahus
Yes.
created so much disgust and distrust amongst a large portion of the Israeli population. I don't say everyone, but a large portion of the Israeli population, to the degree, and what happened in the last couple of years, the fact that we were through 4 election rounds in less than 2 years. I mean, for a country which is known for its stable political system, as we have entertained for such a long time, that, it really, and all these within this painful and demanding process of COVID-19 and the prices that people paid for prevailing within these all difficulties, that people feel relief. I felt it, when I was jogging this morning in in Tel Aviv, along the beach of Tel Aviv.
It's 10 kilometers a morning, if I remember.
It was 13 today.
Oh,
I ran additional 3 just for the fun.
For the celebration.
And people, people identify me in lots of cases. So they were shouting towards me, Chag Sameach, happy holiday, happy holiday, happy holiday, L'chaim, cheers. And people were, And by the way, I could identify that some of those who were shouting towards me were not the typical supporters of Lapid or the left. They appeared to me, at least, to be more representatives of the Likud typical voters.
Let's talk a little bit about Netanyahu. You know the guy many years. You escorted him. You were the mayor of Jerusalem when he appeared and became prime minister first time in the 90s. He said today in a very long speech that he will be back sooner than many people predicted. And do you think he's going to stay? He's going to stick to the title head of opposition, or maybe he will try to have a fast plea bargain in his trial and leave the political scene in Israel for good?
I don't. It's hard to say to start with. It's one of those things that you really are not able to make an accurate forecast as to how exactly. But based on my acquaintance with his behavior, I think that he will try to do everything to stay in, not necessarily because it is probable that he will be able to return to the position of prime minister, but because in that position, he feels that he may be more protected within the context of his legal issues than being entirely out of the political system. So I think that there is a likelihood that he will try to stay in. The question is whether his partners in the Likud will necessarily tolerate it. Will they not say, actually, we can break this government, we can change the makeup of this cabinet, we can join the coalition and return to our ministerial positions within days if we kick out Netanyahu? Because I don't believe that Bennett, in spite of all of his commitments to Lapid, if Netanyahu will disappear and the Likud will be led by someone else, and the Likud will then want to join a coalition, that Bennett will be able to keep his party with him and with the Arab fundamentalist and Islamic party and with the left wing of the Israeli politics when he has an opportunity to make a coalition with the right wing. So I think that there can be a change, but I don't think that Netanyahu ever thought about what's good for the country or what's good for his party. He always thought what's good for himself. And I think that he thinks now that what is good for him is to remain as the head of the opposition.
I wanted to ask you about his speech. He said there's several things. Most interesting or intriguing from my point of view was that he declared that the Iranians are celebrating the nomination of Naftali Bennett as prime minister. He said that Bennett and Lapid will not have the guts or the courage to give the right orders to maintain the Israeli secret war in Iran or against Iran. He said that Israel will be weaker, and I'm not sure that he can say such things, because Iran is closer to nuclear bomb right now a lot than it was when you left office.
Well, when I left office, they were not near where they are now. But I can tell you this, and this is very important, that what we discuss now will be broadcasted across in other countries. As a former prime minister and as someone that was directly in charge of all the operations that we were involved in, which I will not outline to you in details anyway, and based on what I checked in the last few days with the top guys of our security system, I can tell you this, that in the 8 years that Obama was president of the United States, Iran didn't progress a millimeter in the nuclear program. When Donald Trump and Netanyahu cooperated and America pulled out from the agreement about the Iran nuclear plan, Iran made a very substantial progress on this nuclear program. So the opposite of what Netanyahu says is the truth. As long as he was, in the last 4 years, prime minister, and Donald Trump was president of the United States, it all went on the wrong direction. I have trust in President Biden, and I don't think that Bibi Netanyahu, I've been saying it so many times, and you wrote it so many times, his rhetoric is very impressive. His performance has been very non-impressive. The fact remains that there were 2 prime ministers in Israel that destroyed atomic reactors that potentially threatened the state of Israel. The first and the greatest was Menachem Begin in 1981, June of 1981, exactly 40 years ago. He decided to destroy the atomic reactor in Iraq, or Iraq, and he did it. And in 2007, the government that I was the prime minister of decided to destroy the atomic reactor in Syria and did it. I don't know that Netanyahu destroyed any nuclear plant. We made many things in the past, at my time, at his time, which were very impressive, which I'm not sure that we can discuss openly, but which haven't really changed the options that the Iranians have if it will not be for the United States of America and for the superpowers to take the necessary measures. And I trust President Biden that he will do it.
Talking about President Biden exactly, Netanyahu spoke also about the Biden administration and said, I think, a few very dangerous things. He said that there are a lot of differences right now between the administration in Israel, and he promised President Biden not to talk or to speak openly about it. And then he just spoke about it, and actually he was trying to, I don't know why, maybe set some fire between future Prime Minister Bennett and the American administration, instead of, praying to Bennett's success to heal the wound that Netanyahu himself caused in the relationship of Israel and the Democratic Party, for example.
Man, this is vintage Bibi. Bibi did precisely what he's been doing all the time. Do you think that to make that provocation against President Obama and to threaten the entire world that he's going to attack Tehran and Qum and other centers where allegedly the Iranians are preparing their nuclear plan? Was it smart? Was it smart to force himself to the United States Congress a short while before the elections in America, short while before the elections in Israel? Was it in the best interest of the state of Israel? No. So he doesn't think about the best interest of the state of Israel. He thought about himself. And the reason that he made this provocation today is so that he will be able to say in 2 or 3 weeks' time that Bennett and Lapid either surrender to the American position, which is one option, or to blame them for having a confrontation with the American government that is the best friend of the state of Israel. So this is a typical provocative rhetoric that characterizes the Netanyahu administration all along. It's not surprising. And I think that the last ones who are surprised by it are the leaders of the United States. And I think that also Bennett and Lapid and Gantz and the others expected some kind of provocations. They were not surprised either.
What's your best advice to Naftali Bennett? I guess he'll be invited to Washington and get what the Americans call the full treatment in the White House. But still, let's not forget, he's a right-wing ideologist. And what should he do in order, to melt the ice between him and the president?
Let me put it this way. I don't want to become an advisor to Bennett or a commentator, a political commentator. I'm not there. I'm a former prime minister. When I need or when I think it's important, I just express my opinion. So my opinion is this. I think there will be a mistake to try and step into the shoes of Netanyahu on the political issues, namely for instance, to try and raise the volume of the Iranian issue now in opposition to the American government position is a mistake. We all know, they know what the Israeli position is. They know what we have been saying. They then don't need to get a reminder every day publicly in a provocative manner, because that will create unnecessary distrust between the new government and President Biden. President Biden will make an agreement with Iran. I think that the best that we can do and should do is to try and create trust and rapport between the prime minister and the president, so that we will be able to advise, we will be briefed about the different issues on the agenda of these negotiations with Iran, and we'll be able to advise the American government on what we think is important to emphasize in the context of this proposed agreement, so that the interests of Israel will be best secured in this context.
I want to ask you finally, I think we are just out of time, but I cannot leave you without asking you about the historic, I don't know how to call it, event that we're not talking about enough, of first time an Arab party, not just an Arab party, the Muslim movement, is inside an Israeli political coalition. Naftali Bennett, in his speech today in the Knesset, he hinted that it could not happen without Netanyahu, because Netanyahu was the guy that actually confirmed this possibility. He was trying himself to form a government with Mansour Abbas. Are you as excited as I am?
I'm very excited. I can tell you that I think that this is a potential turning point in the history of the state of Israel. This is not the first time that a Muslim Arab is a member of the cabinet. The first time it was in my cabinet in 2007, when Ghaled Majadla became the Minister of Sport and Culture in the cabinet. But this is the first time that an Arab party joins the cabinet. And this is a very significant moment. Now it depends on the government, on the leadership of this government, on the Bennett and Lapid and Gantz and Gideon Sa'ar and all the others, whether they will understand that the time has come to provide the Arab population in Israel with complete equal rights in reality, not just in theory, that they deserve as Israeli citizens. If we will do it, it can change many things. It is not, of course, instead of the need to get back to the table of negotiations with the Palestinians that we have to do, and I'm not certain that the makeup of this cabinet will allow it. But if we will start this process with the Arabs in Israel as we started today, if we will continue with care, with sensitivity, with respect, with dignity, and with firmness, I think that it may turn out to be the most significant change that this government will bring to our lives.
And another final question, do you think that the rotation, the replacement between Netanyahu and I'm sorry, Liz, I'm so used to say Netanyahu, Bennett and Lapid on August 2023 will actually happen? And if so, you know Yair Lapid very well. You've been almost his uncle, his late father's best friend. Do you think he is ready?
Look, you never know if someone is ready until he's there and he actually performs and he holds the responsibility. But I can say that he can take pride in the fact that 8 years ago, when he started his party, no one gave him the slightest chance. And everyone was ridiculing him and said, what can an anchorman from television know about politics and how he would prevail? So number one, his party is for the second time the second largest party in Israel. This party itself is very stable and very strong and very united with all its members. Yair Lapid, actually the one that formed this coalition against all odds and against all the predictions by almost everyone. And he has gone a long way since the beginning. So I think that another 2 years as an alternate prime minister can definitely help him get ready for the job. And I certainly wish him to make the best possible use of this time in order to prepare himself for this position as prime minister. I just hope that in the meantime, there will not be differences and difficulties that will break the partnership between him and Bennett. And that remains to be tested and seen.
Prime Minister Olmert, I thank you very much for this exciting and interesting conversation. Thank you and shalom.
Shalom, shalom. Thank you very much.
We'll take now a very short break and come back with some final thoughts. Stay with us.
I'm Andrew Parasolidi, president of the award-winning media news site El Monitor, where we cover the Middle East with some of the best reporters and columnists anywhere. And I'm excited to announce our new podcast, On the Middle East, where each week I will interview newsmakers from the U.S. and the region about the latest news and trends with additional commentary from our on-the-ground correspondents. Those of you who follow the region know that what happens in the Middle East doesn't stay in the Middle East. And to cite another great movie line, every time the U.S. tries to get out, the region pulls us back. Your time is valuable, so let me promise you this. You will learn something and you will never be bored, because each week we'll be talking with and listening to those leaders who are making the news and shaping the trends in this critical and fascinating region. So please subscribe to On the Middle East with me, Andrew Parasolidi.
Thank you for staying with us. We just had a very interesting conversation with Prime Minister Ehud Olmert. He has been there, he's done that, and he gave us a lot of inside information and predictions about whatever is going on in Israel and what will happen in the future. I asked him first about the shameful sights and sounds from the Knesset when most of the Likud members and also the Haredi Knesset members didn't let Naftali Bennett, the next prime minister, to complete a single sentence, yelling, hacking, and shouting. And Prime Minister Olmert said it is a shameful act. He did not remember anything like it in history. Then I asked him what is such a complicated coalition that goes from the far left to the extreme right is capable of doing. And he said that he hopes they will be courageous enough and maybe they will find some way to make history like Prime Minister Begin or Sharon did, making peace with Egypt and trying to make peace with the Palestinians. But Prime Minister Olmert knows there are no many chances for this to happen. And he said that they will have to stick with the agenda that unites them all, mainly internal agenda to try and heal the wound that Netanyahu is leaving behind him. I asked him how come in Tel Aviv, the secular, international, liberal city, they are dancing all night, thousands of people in the Rabin Square, when Naftali Bennett is nominated to be prime minister, a right-wing ideologist with a yarmulke on his head. He once was the CEO of the settlers movement. And Olmert said that the celebration is not a right or left celebration, but just celebrating the departure of what he said of the Netanyahus. Not Benjamin, but also I think he meant Mrs. Netanyahu and the elder son. I asked Prime Minister Olmert if he thinks that Netanyahu is here to stay. Will he stick in the post of the opposition leader? And Olmert said that he will try to do everything in order to be more protected in his trial in the criminal process. And when he is the leader of the opposition, it is a lot more easier. He's still guarded by the Shin Bet, and he's one of the most important people in Israel. So for the time being, at least, he's there to stay. Prime Minister Olmert was very, very interesting when he spoke about whatever Netanyahu said today in his speech about the Iranian issue. And he said that Olmert spoke in the last weeks with all the senior officials in the Israeli defense and military establishment, and they confirmed him that during the 8 President Obama years, Iran did not proceed 1 millimeter, did not advance 1 millimeter towards the bomb, like it did when Donald Trump replaced Obama and Netanyahu convinced him to quit from the nuclear deal. He said also that there are 2 Israeli prime ministers that dealt with nuclear reactors in Arab states and just destroyed them. One of them was, Olmert said, the great Menachem Begin in 1981 that destroyed the Iraqi nuclear reactor. And the second one was Olmert himself in 2006 when the Israeli Air Force destroyed the Syrian reactor. And Netanyahu just had many, many speeches against the Iranian nuclear threat, but not deeds. He did not do enough in order to stop it. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope to find you here next week in Al Monitor in On Israel. I'm Caspit from Tel Aviv. Take care.